Hi, I'm Dr. Luann Fortune, and I am a professor in the Mind-Body Medicine department. And I'm also today pleased to introduce our presenter for our Mind-Body Workshop series. Kelli Hughart is a Reiki Master and teacher, and she's also a PhD student in integrative health and wellness and mind-body medicine, and she's in her dissertation phase right now. It's actually been my honor to work with Kelli for some years because she's also a teaching assistant as part of the Mind-Body Medicine team, and many of you may know her there. But what you might not know is that Kelli has over 37 years experience in holistic practices, and she's also a herbal medicine maker and educator. Her diverse background includes clinical herbalism, clinical aromatherapy, functional medicine health coaching, and hypnosis. She's been serving clients for over 15 years. And today we know we will be very pleased for her insights and expertise, which she brings to us as healthcare professionals and also students. So Kelli is committed to giving back to the world, and this is delightfully an opportunity for us to share in the benefits of that. So coming to us today from her home in West Virginia and Virginia, I would like to introduce Kelli Hughart, Reiki Ancient Practice for Modern Times. Thank you, Kelli, for being here.
Thanks so much. I appreciate you. And thanks, first of all, just want to thank you and honor you for inviting me to do this. It's a privilege and an honor. And I always want to give a shout out to the people who behind the scenes, the tech people that make all this happen for Mindful Moments. So thanks, Sandy and April as well. And so, yeah, I'm going to be talking today about Reiki and ancient practice, but for modern times. So we can advance the slide. So again, my name is Kelli Hughart. Kind of sounds a little bit like yogurt. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the definition of Reiki. Then we're going to talk a little bit about a brief history. And then we're going to go into some ways you can use it daily. And then we're going to talk about the hand positions. And then we'll kind of circle back and finalize. And if you have questions, concerns, or wonderings, you're more than welcome to put those in the chat. So the term Reiki is a Japanese term, and the Japanese word for Rei, which means universal, and Ki means vital life force energy. So when we put this together, Reiki is basically the energy that comes from the universe that supports our vital life force. And this is the idea, and we're going to talk a little bit about how that looks, but this is the Japanese word for this sacred healing art. Traditionally, I'm a traditional apprentice and trained. So traditionally, we have 4 sacred symbols that are in the Japanese language, and we do have to learn how to write those out by memory. And there are 3 attunements that come with becoming a Reiki master. So a level 1 attunement, and then a level 2, and then a Reiki master. Now, some modern Reiki people will actually split the Reiki master teacher into 2 attunements. But since I'm traditionally trained and an apprentice, that's not how we do it. But there's no wrong way, but that's just the traditional way is the 3 attunements and the 4 sacred symbols. Okay, slide. Awesome. Thank you. So the beautiful, wonderful thing that I like about Reiki is that it has very few contraindications and it tends to be non-invasive. So that's really good, especially if you have people who have allergies, or if they have, if they are on medications, or if they have any type of issue where they can't use, like, for example, if they're on a medication, we can use this instead. And not in place of, but as an adjunct, right? So the idea here is it's very non-invasive, and then there's very few contraindications, so that we can use this practice really very fairly freely, obviously with permission and with ethics. Additionally, in level 3, level 2 rather, we have a no contact. So this is a distance healing. But even in level 1, we can have no contact. We can kind of put our energy over the biofield versus actually hands-on. So there's some nuances there. And what it does is it supports the natural healing energy field, which is really, really great. And so let's advance the slide. So we could be here all day long just talking about something like the history and whatnot. But we're going to just talk just briefly. Is Reiki actually is a healing practice that originated over 2,500 years ago in the sutras and the Tibetan sutras, and it was actually thought to be lost. But in the 1900s, Dr. Usui, who was a Japanese monk, he actually went to the mountain and he revived, so to speak, this healing practice. And I'm going to tell a little bit about a story about him being on the mountain. That is traditionally the story that is passed down from Reiki Master to apprentices over the years. So Dr. Usui went to the mountain to fast and meditate. And he actually laid out a set of stones. And this is how he kept track of the days that had gone by. So every time a day would pass, he would discard a stone. Now, on the last day, he actually saw flickering lights, and the light turned into a direct beam that came into his third eye. And it was said, or it's said during this time, they actually became unconscious. And that when he reawakened, that he was forever transformed by the miracle of Reiki. And so then as he came down off the mountain, and there are a couple of stories that follow up for this, but for time's sake, we're not going to tell all of those. But as he came down from the mountain, he hit his toe and the toe was bleeding. And of course, you know, if you stubbed your toe and damaged your toe, how painful that can be. And he simply placed his hands around his toe and the toe healed on the spot. And so from this moment is the moment that we have chosen as Reiki masters, as Reiki practitioners, to say that the modern form of Reiki was born, so to speak. And let's go to the next slide. Perfect. And so now, and my background actually is a picture that I took in Hawaii. So Reiki was actually brought to the West through Hawaii by Takata, Sensei Takata, and she was actually a student of Hayashi, who was an apprentice of Dr. Usui. So we see the lineage already beginning to form, right? And so she had a lot of medical issues. And so what she did was she began to study Reiki very intently, and she healed herself of her medical issues. And so then she came to the West, and then she began to have apprentices and teach Reiki from there. And now it's said that there are over 1 million people, and of course, and counting, who are practicing Reiki. As a matter of fact, I'm getting ready to attune another master here in the next couple of days. So it's just a beautiful, wonderful story. Okay, we can go to next. Perfect. Thank you. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of how it looks at the levels of Reiki for those of you who may be interested in that. And of course, you can do some work on your own or research that as well. But typically, traditionally speaking, there are 3 levels. Level one is in-person work. Level 2 is distant work. And then level 3, which is what I am, is a Reiki master teacher. So the Reiki master teacher is not somebody who, is a master of Reiki per se, but really what we're allowing is Reiki to master us, right? It means we're dedicated to the work and we're dedicated to teaching others. So in my practice, when someone comes to me, they only get attuned to Reiki master if they have an intention to teach. So it's not there just for a title or for show. It's there to show your dedication to teach Reiki to others. And we actually teach the sacred initiations during that, and also the symbols. You're fine. That's okay. You can keep going. You're good. So here's an analogy that I like to use about how Reiki works. So it's sort of like a water hose, and we're probably all familiar with a water hose and how a water hose works. And the outside of our body is kind of like the hose part, right? And then the Reiki energy flows through the body, which is kind of like the water. So that's a really good analogy for you to kind of understand how that works. And so as that Reiki energy flows through you and then flows out through your hands, this is how we can balance our chakras, we can improve energy flow, and we can support so many different things by nourishing that inner vital force. In herbalism, we call this the inner doctor. And this is how we can do that by balancing the energy and really supporting. And this actually helps support various aspects of healing, from physical healing, emotional, all kinds of various different types of healing. This is the idea, is that the nourishment that goes on here, just like when we're nourishing our body with foods, right, and clean water and such. All right, we can go to the next slide. So I do want to mention Pamela Miles, who has been really instrumental in bringing Reiki to the medical field, and you can look her up if you'd like. But since the 1990s, Reiki is actually beginning to be practiced in medical clinics, in hospitals and in clinics. I know Cleveland Clinic has a write-up on it. I believe John Hopkins does. There's a lot of, sort of really forefront people that are well known, um, medical institutions and medical providers, so to speak, that are actually bringing Reiki into the practice. Reiki can be used for pain management, for anxiety, for pre and post op. And again, we're talking about different types of care, oncology, chronic illnesses, mental health, and even like end of life type care as well. So there's a lot of variation and variety here within the medical community as well. And we can go to the next slide. Oh, okay. So this is my favorite slide. Sorry. Because I get to show the picture of my Ginger Pie, who was my first Irish Terrier. She was an agility dog and she retired out to be a therapy dog. And this is her actually doing therapy work. But one of the reasons why I like this is because it just shows the versatility. We can use Reiki with our animals. We can use Reiki with our plants. We can use Reiki with ourselves. And when she was in her last days and when she was in her transition, I had several Reiki masters with me. And we actually did Reiki with her as she transitioned over. And of course, as somebody who has done wildlife rehabilitation for years, we can even use it with wildlife. We have to always be ethical in how we do it. So I'm not going to put my hands on. With that, I might just sit in the room and just actually offer Reiki to the room around wildlife or animals. For example, I've got the new service dog puppy coming in, so he's already gotten some Reiki. All right, this is a really cute thing, and I found this a lot of years ago, and I've saved it on my computer. And it says, "I just have to say, I had a different impression about what Reiki is all about." So I just thought that would be a cute slide to put in. So you were not actually using a rake, just so you know. All right, we can go to the next slide. What I do want to say is before we go into the five principles, the five traditional principles of Reiki, is that we want to make sure that we're using ethics and everything, right? So we don't want to force Reiki on anyone or anything. If you have a pup or you have your kitty, sometimes just I teach my apprentices just simply sitting in the room and allowing them to come into that energy if they like. We always want to be ethical in all the things that we do, right? This is a driving factor in all types of being a practitioner in any way, shape, or form. So I just wanted to mention that. So this is Dr. Usui's five Reiki principles, and this is the drawing in the original Japanese. And I didn't actually raise my hand, so I'm sorry. I'm not sure why that did that. But the five principles, and again, the traditional, we see them a little differently nowadays when you look at them. But just for today, do not anger. Just for today, do not worry. Just for today, be filled with gratitude. Just for today, devote yourself to your work. And for today, be kind to all people. And we've modified these now a little bit, more modern times, we've modified them a little bit. So sometimes you may see them as just for today, release anger. Just for today, release worry. Just for today, show gratitude. Just for today, be honest and ethical in all your work. And just for today, be kind to all living things. And you're going to see a lot of different variations with that. And that's okay. Next slide. Perfect. Okay. So as somebody who's done wildlife rehabilitation and has worked with owls and hawks, I just thought this was adorable. So I had to put it in. So we could go to the next slide. So I want to talk a little bit about the various ways that you can use Reiki. And of course, this is not an exhaustive list. If you're a Reiki practitioner, there may be some that look familiar, but you may have other ways, and that's okay too. But it's really great in the morning to set your intention for the day and to start the day out with Reiki and really start the day out with some calmness and with your meditation practice or whatever that looks like for you. When I'm traveling, I will often clear hotel spaces or any type of space that's near me with Reiki. So that's really beneficial. I'm kind of skipping around. I'm not going in order. Reiki in your beverage, your water, your nourishment. I always Reiki my meals before I eat. I simply put my hands over the food, and which is a beautiful, wonderful way to just give that extra nourishment for you as well. Reiki in your gratitude practice. And of course, I've mentioned Reiki with your plants and with your animals. I'm an herbalist, so I grow a lot of plants, and I grow some at-risk plants as well. And I am either one of those people that before a storm comes will go out and actually put my hands on the trees and Reiki the trees. So yes, I'm that person. But the point is, there's so many different ways you can use it. Help to support sleep. If you have a really big call coming up or a paper coming up, you can use Reiki for that. Really supporting, stress relief. It's really, really well known for that. And of course, mental clarity as well. So a lot of different ways we can use that. So next slide, please. Perfect. All right, so these are the hand positions, and you can snap a picture of this if you want. It's also in the file or the chat section, so you can download that. But if you want to snap a picture, we're going to actually come back to that. But these are some of the traditional hand positions. And then we're just going to kind of come back and we'll unshare the slides and we'll go through this together. But I wanted to kind of give you, I want to show you ahead of time so that way if you want to have them, you can have them when they're ready. So we can go ahead and go to the next slide. Awesome, possum. Thank you. Okay, so this is my favorite hand position. Very simple, hand on the chest and a hand on the belly. This is what I do every morning. This is what I do before I go to bed at night. I do self-Reiki every day. And it's like I mentioned earlier, when I have my apprentices, they do not get to advance to a next level until they have built in a solid Reiki practice. And that's just because that's how I was traditionally apprenticed. And so you tend to, do that. But just simple, easy peasy, one hand here, one hand on the abdomen, and hands on, Reiki on. All right, let's go to the next slide. Perfect. So now I would invite you to practice with me. So we can, so you can unshare the slides if you want. Let me read you can read the quote later, so no worries. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to demo just catching your bubble, your auric bubble, and then we're going to go through a couple of hand positions. We don't have to go through them all. You have them. You can practice them. You can, use your just for today principles along with them, but we're going to go and catch a bubble, and I'm going to just teach you how to do that. And so what I'd like for you to do is choose one hand. Use typically your non-dominant hand. And you can just put your hand up. I'm going to put my hand up further than I would. And I'm going to teach you how to catch your auric bubble. And then we're going to use this to go to okay. Yeah. Sandy put the quote in for me. Thank you. All right. So we're going to take this hand Reiki is a gentle energy. So think like flower essences, gentle energy, right? Feather, not a brick. Feather, not a brick. So we're going to take our hand and we're going to just gently start to catch our auric bubble. And this can really look like this. Take a couple of deep breaths here. Just invite you to settle in, whatever that looks like for you. And then I'm going to take this hand and just start looking for my bubble, wherever that is. And it's can sometimes sort of feel a little sticky or a little like a bubble gum bubble. And then we're just going to kind of catch it. And then whenever you catch it, I sort of like to feel around to make sure I have it. It's still going to take me just a minute. Okay, so I have mine. And so I have it here. And so now what I want to do is just breathe in for a minute. And now I want to just imagine, you can see, sense, feel, or pretend. Now just imagine your bubble getting bigger and a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger. And just for time's sake, we'll probably go a little bit faster than we normally would, but take your time here when you have it. And now just allow it to get bigger. And now when you feel right and when you feel ready for it, just kind of allow it to come all the way around you, or even as you're almost as if you're stepping into it. Good. And do we need a little more time here? Or do we feel like we have it? Okay. So now that we have that, you have an idea of what your aura is, what your aura feels like. So now what we're going to do is start at the top of the head. Now, this hand position is not on your handout, but that's okay. So we're going to start at the top of the head at the crown chakra. So you kind of release your bubble. It's here. You don't have to worry about it. It's there. It's not going anywhere. We're going to start at the top of the crown chakra. I'm going to move my camera up a little bit so you can see the top. And then I'm going to kind of do the same thing. Sense my crown chakra. I might have to raise you up just a little bit so I make sure where I find where it is. And then wherever you have it, and this can be a different place for each of you, the more you do Reiki, the bigger your aura will get, and you'll be able to sense this more. So really, this is just kind of play with it a little bit. But when you have it, I call this the master push. And this is just my own terminology. There's nothing out there on this per se. It might be, but this is my terminology. And now we're just going to just allow that Reiki just to flow through. And now, when you're ready, I want you to just bring your hands down to the top of your head. And this is actually hand position number one. Now, at some point in time, there used to be like a Reiki timer. Some people set a timer. I don't set a timer. I just use my intuition. And when it feels like it's right to go to the next hand position, I do that. Some people, when they're new, like to actually spend certain minutes each hand position. I don't feel like there's a right or wrong. It's just whatever resonates with you. All right, so we're just going to go ahead and go down to the ears. And this is a soft, soft touch. Remember, think feather, not brick, feather. Very soft touch. And you can even go just gently above the ear level. So it doesn't actually have to touch, and both of those are okay. Really soft touch. We can even go to the back of the head, right around the occipital lobe there. And then we can slide around and we can put one hand here and one hand here. Now, again, if I'm going to do this for my own session, I would make each session a little longer, but for time's sake, we want to just make sure we're getting through. Now, what we can do is put one hand on each of your back area. And there's no rule that says you have to go in order. Some people like to go in the order it says, and that's okay. And now we can come to the front. I'm just going to move my hands. Okay. And now we can just kind of work down the front of the body. And now you won't be able to see me because I'm not standing up, but we can take our hand and put one hand on the right hip, one hand on the left hip. I don't think that's in your in the hand positions. It's just an extra hand position. But you can actually practice sending from your right hand to your left hand, and then from your left hand to your right hand. And it goes really well with guided imagery or an imagery of some sort. So you can kind of even close your eyes and just sort of imagine sort of like you're ping-ponging the energy back and forth. Now you can come to the top of your thighs. And then you can come down to your knees. I'm a martial artist, so there's a lot of energy going to my knees. I will not stay there. And then we can come down to the calves. And then finally, we can come to each foot. And you can put your one hand on your knee and one hand to your foot, and you can actually send the energy and ping pong your energy off that way. So bounce it from the foot to the knee and from the knee to the foot. And now you can switch. And now let's just kind of keep the touch on the body if you can. And let's try to work to the back of the body, to your hip area, back of your hips, and like the lower back. Let me just put our hands there. Basically, wherever you can reach and feel comfortable. Don't hurt yourself. It's not about hurting yourself or straining of anything. And then if you're very, very flexible, you can kind of come all the way up the back. And again, not hurting yourself or not straining. but just, allowing whatever feels good and a good reach for you. And you
Great.
don't have to catch your bubble each time. This really is just more of a demo of how to sense the energy. But once you have that and you understand it, when I do my Reiki practice daily, I don't catch my bubble every day. I will often check in with my bubble because the bigger my bubble is, typically, usually is the better, is an indicator of my chi or my ki in this case, right? So if my ki or my chi is bigger than and I'm doing really good, then my energy bubble is generally going to be a little bit bigger. If my ki is small and I'm struggling, then I'm going to notice that bubble is typically going to be smaller. Then I really know for myself that I really need to up my Reiki practice. Does this make sense? No, your bubble is there all the time. I mean,
Okay.
your auric bubble is there with you all the time. So again, this was just sort of a way for you to get to know that and to understand that your auric bubble, or how to catch your bubble, is a part of the energy that goes with Reiki. Okay, awesome, possum. Good.
Kelly, we have another question. Do
Sure.
we touch the body or do we hover over our body instead?
That's a great question. So the question was, do we touch our body or do we hover over? Is that what I'm hearing you say,
Yep, that's
Sandy?
correct.
Okay, perfect. Both or either one. So I personally, most of the time, I'm going to do hands-on, actually touch the body. If you're a Reiki practitioner, then you already know this. There are sometimes that it's contraindicated for you to touch somebody's body. So then you would hover over. But practitioners know this when they're training. So for our purposes here, this is more about what you're comfortable with. If you are comfortable with actually touching your body, that's great. If there's a particular area that you happen to be sensitive with, then you can do hands over that area versus actually touching. And we're still within the energy biofield. It's still working. Does that answer the question?
Yep, thanks, Kelly.
Okay, awesome possum. Okay. Let's see. All right, so let's see. I just want to make sure I'm going to circle back here. So if you are sensitive to touch, then just hands over, right? Hands over. If there's a particular body part that's sensitive to touch, hands over is fine. And when you are doing this, when you are touching your body, again, soft hands. I've got grandbabies, so I'm going to say soft hands, right? Soft hands. Again, think feather, not brick. We want to make sure that when we are offering Reiki to ourselves, we're being kind to ourselves, we're being gentle with ourselves. A lot of people like to play soft music, or some people use hypnosis, self-hypnosis, guided imagery. Some people use their breath work while they're doing this. So there's a lot of ways you can integrate this into your current practice, whatever that looks like for you. So with that being said, let's go back to sharing the slides, if you're okay with that, Sandy. And then we'll move to the next one. Oh, and that was the quote I really, really liked, was about and Sandy put that in the chat. Reiki is the greatest secret in the science of energetics. Reiki is a really powerful tool in energetics, even though it's soft, more like a feather. Gentle does not mean weak. All right. So now I just want to give you some sample ways. You can come up with your own ideas, obviously, but I want to give you some sample ways that you can use Reiki daily. So you can set your intention in the mornings with your Reiki. You can, upon waking up, you might want to Reiki out the principles, write out the just for today principles. Eventually, you will come to memorize those, like most of us do, but you could write them out. You could write them out as part of your gratitude journal before you go to bed, which I'll talk about in a minute. You can spend a little bit of time in the morning while you're drinking your coffee or your tea and Reiki your cup. Use Reiki in the morning when you're doing your mindfulness. So many different ways. And this is basically my sample routine. I just thought I'd share it with you guys. All right, we can go to the next slide. Okay. So, how to use Reiki throughout the day? So, Reiki your plants in your garden, and you can Reiki your animals while they're with you. Again, we always want to use ethics. We don't want to force Reiki on an animal. So, you can just sit with your hands like this. If the animal comes near you, great. When they decide to leave that Reiki bubble, so to speak, they can leave as well. But again, we always want to act with ethics, even with our animals. We don't want to push anything, on them. You can set Reiki intentions. So if you have a big paper coming up, you can set your intention about, when I'm working on my paper, I really want to be mindful. I want to do some self Reiki before I do my paper, whatever that looks like, an important phone call. If you have any type of workshop or something like that, this can be a great little way just to get some simple self care before you go on to something that's a little bit more rigorous for you, whatever that looks like. Again, Reiki before you take your nourishment throughout the day. And again, I love Reiki with mindfulness and meditation and with self hypnosis, guided imagery, so many different ways. Breath work, again, it's just so versatile. So you can use it in so many different ways. Okay, next slide. Okay, so I had this is not the picture of my grandbaby's feet, but it looks just like her feet. So there's a reason why I put it in there. Grand number 3, actually. I have 5 grandbabies. So before you go to bed, you can use your Reiki with your gratitude practice. Before you go to bed, you can put your hand here and put your hand on your abdomen, and I literally go to sleep doing Reiki. So you can just put your hands, you can listen to soft music, whatever that looks like for you, and whatever hand position resonates with you. If you don't like this hand position, like I like this, there's no right or wrong. You can do whatever works for you. And again, I've mentioned this several times, but Reiki does integrate well with other different types of modalities like progressive muscle relaxation. That's a great thing to do before we go to bed to really help us to get into a nice deep sleep, imagery, and other types of modalities as well. I was going to throw in the hypnosis. No, wink, wink, nod, nod, as we say. All right, go ahead and let's go to the next slide. All right, so now it's your turn. This is an opportunity for you to say, oh, this is what I would like to do, or what does that look like for you? Are any Reiki hand positions for better sleep? That's a really great question. Oh, and then Jessica also said, oh yeah, include Reiki in your teachings. Absolutely. It's so beneficial for so many different things. I think this is really just something to kind of navigate on your own, Sandy. I am a really big fan of, I call it the master push, which I've already said, where you're just above the crown chakra and you're pushing down. But before going to bed, I have also found, besides the hand here and the hand on the belly, I have found that a gentle foot massage with some oil first and then Reiki in the feet can be very, very valuable for sleep as well. Oh, about ethics. Yeah. Okay. Ask permission. So there's a couple of different ways we can ask permission when we're giving Reiki. One of the ways is if you have an animal, then they can't say per se. So what you can actually do is just sit and allow them to come in and out. Or you can seek permission by simply saying, if this person, like if I was offering it to a friend, for example, I would call them up. Obviously, I'm not going to force that on them, but if I called them up or if we were talking about something and they said, Kelly, I might ask permission, would it be okay if I share with you a tool? And if they said yes, then I would share with them a Reiki tool, and I would say, this is something I'm skilled in. Would it be okay if I sent this for you? So we can ask permission in a physical way. Now, once you're at level 2, we can ask permission in a different way through the ether when we're connecting from our auric bubble to their auric bubble. And so that's another way of ethically asking permission. We can also send it out to the energy to the earth. You can go out and just put your hands on the ground on the earth and send the energy to the earth. You can put your hands on the tree. Asking permission can look very differently, but it could be as something simple as sensing. I'm going to go to the tulip poplar tree and I want to offer Reiki to the tulip poplar tree. So I'm going to energetically ask the tree and just wait and sense. And we do this in herbalism as well, especially when we're doing flower essences. We always want to get permission from everything. And this is another way to do that.
So, for example, one of our participants is a yoga teacher
Mm-hmm.
and asked about, well, how do I incorporate Reiki into my teaching as a yoga instructor? And I think somebody else said, well, what about my own spiritual health practice? And as a coach, you've had a lot of experience working with people and maybe
Yep.
making suggestions on how they can incorporate Reiki into their lives. On
Yep.
the other hand, I also honor your lineage, and you might want to speak about at what point might people want to seek more training before they actually attempt to train others? So there are two
Yep.
questions that are embedded there, and I think I've
Okay.
addressed everything from the chat box so far.
Okay. Yeah. So always, 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 we want to seek permission, ask permission. If somebody comes to you, then permission is implied, but we still want to be ethical on that. With as far as like the yoga practitioner, you may Reiki the room before they come in. You could Reiki the room after they come out. You could sit at the front of the room and just offer Reiki and just sit with your hands open and just actually invite anybody who may be interested, who would want to receive, to sit with their hands open. This would be more of a level 2 attunement, but you could still do this probably with a level 1 attunement. And so that would be a good way. It really involves seeking permission. I have a group program, and what I do is just every month they know that on this Friday of this month, I'm going to offer Reiki if they want it. And they can just simply type in the comment section, yes. So that can look very differently depending on what kind of practice. But you always do want to make sure that you are, that you're acting in your training, in your ethics, in your training. And if you are a Reiki practitioner, then you're acting within the ethics of Reiki as well, which is very big on seeking permission. My lineage teaches that you have to have an attunement before that you can offer Reiki. A level 1 attunement would be where your self-Reiki would come in. Level 2 attunement would be where you could sit and offer Reiki to somebody distant. And then, of course, level 3 is teaching. I hope I answered those embedded questions.
And then there's the question about how do those who might want to go further in their practice get training?
Yeah. So for those of you who do want to go further in your practice, I recommend that you find somebody local to you that you can apprentice with. So there are so many different ways out there, and there's so many different courses out there. But as somebody who was traditionally apprenticed and trained, when I work with my apprentices, it is a constant back and forth. I'm constantly teaching. We're constantly checking in. I'm not going to just teach the hand motions and say, well, going about your day. There's going to be questions. They have to practice when they're a level 1 practitioner, like if they're training with me, a level 1 practitioner, they have to do self-Reiki as a part of their daily practice before they can go on to level 2. Level 2 is about distance work. There's a lot of questions that come up with distance work. And this is really when you want to have somebody who is well trained and understands all the different questions that are coming up, and not just somebody who's going to give you a certificate and walk away and never going to see them again. My Reiki masters that I have taught, I have known for 10 years, and they're still sometimes coming to me and asking questions. So finding somebody, the International Association, Luann or Dr. Fortune, you might know actually I used to be on there, but I don't subscribe to it anymore. The International Association for Reiki Practitioners. Does that sound about right?
I'll see what I can find and put it in the chat box. I
I
know what
think
you mean.
that's it.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think it's like the IA. Yeah. And I just let my membership expire, but you guys can contact me and I can always help you find someone. But yeah, finding someone, I prefer to find somebody that you can work with in person that can teach you the things, that you can ask the questions, because you're going to really build a relationship with this person. So you want to resonate with them too. You don't want to go with somebody and be like, Okay, so you get your sheet of paper, but now you can't ever ask them a question, or something comes up about ethics, or something comes up when you're doing a distance work that you didn't expect. This is really when you're working with someone who's experienced this and has a lot of teaching underneath their belt, can really help you and guide you. Um, so are we good on that? Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. I think it's just about questions, but I want to make sure. Yep. And then you've got my contact information as well. Yes, it's it. Yeah, IARP. That's it. And so you can actually go to that website and find somebody near you. I prefer to, my people are always an in-person training, and I do work with them over a period of, typically for me, when I'm training a Reiki master, it's usually about a 5-year commitment. I know that sounds long, but I want to make sure that they have all the things they need. I want to make sure that they understand. I want to make sure that all those questions are answered, because they're going to go and teach it themselves. And so they really need to have a solid foundation, and not just um, reading something on the internet and moving on. Not that the internet's not a beautiful, wonderful thing, but we've got to be mindful about that.
Kelly, can I add something onto that too
Sure,
about
absolutely.
scope of practice? So I'm a great believer in being trained for what you're putting out there, which you clearly are, and we can all, in many ways, benefit from doing Reiki on ourselves. If you are planning on doing it with others, be sure to check your local scope of practice regulations on that. So, for example, I've been on massage therapy licensing boards that require someone who puts their hands on people, even if they're just doing Reiki. And I mean just with quotation marks around it, because I don't consider it to be a minor thing. If they don't have a license to touch in some other way, then they have to get a license to be a massage
Yep.
therapist to meet the other qualifications that are associated with that. So if you are going to offer Reiki to another, especially within your professional practice, make sure that it is covered under whatever the scope of your practice is in your license. And the way to do that would be to check with your local association or your local licensing board. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And typically, when people, like when somebody comes to me for like Reiki level 1, we're going to communicate all these things. We're going to, I mean, this is, an hour presentation, but we're going to dive deep on ethics and scope of practice, what you are qualified to do, what you're not qualified to do. As a Reiki master teacher, I'm not qualified to diagnose anyone or to give them medical advice in any way. And so when I'm working with my Reiki apprentices, I'm going to make sure that they have all the solid information so that they know what they can and what they cannot do, and that they have the gestalt of all of it. And again, this is one reason why I have a little bit of an issue of some of the classes that are out there, because it's an online class, and then they don't really have the full scope of what they can and cannot do. And we always want to make sure that we are acting within ethics in our practice, and we always want to make sure that we are in our scope. When you're doing it yourself, this is pretty, not so much an issue. But if we are going to offer it to others, then we have to make sure that we have the license to do so, or the background that allows us to do that. And we have to make sure that we know local ordinances, local laws, and laws and ethics of our profession as well. So yeah, thank you for that. There's a lot of research now that we didn't have when I first was trained a bazillion years ago, however long that was. Also, one of the things I want to mention as well is that I think it's really important to know your Reiki master's lineage. I didn't share my lineage. I'm happy to share it if you'd like. But I think we should ask that question. We want to know who the person that we want to make sure that they know what they're doing. And we want to make sure that we're getting really good training as well. So I don't think it's obtrusive. I've had people come to me, and no one's asked me for my lineage, but I always share it because I think it's something that we should know. And we would just want to make sure that we're getting with somebody who has nice, solid training, so that we are also doing the right thing in our practice.